Next turn. Roll for initiative. Tie? Wow. Oof. Okay, so the Americans get 8. The Germans get 4. 4 from 8 is 4. Divide that by 2 is 2. So the Americans are going to get 2 activations before the Germans can even go. Well, I guess, technically speaking, I have this. And then we're going to. Okay, we'll just use that. The official counter. It's, again, from the older games. I'm not sure what the new ones look like. Okay, so the Americans get to go twice. We'll make the first activation this captain. Moving in with one of those and one of those. So now, okay, so 12.52 says fire types in an assault hex. Units in an assault hex may not fire on targets as... Okay, yeah. Okay, so in 12.3 it says voluntary combat. If an activated unit enters a hex which was already occupied by friendly and enemy units at the start of the moving unit's action segment, or if the turn begins with both sides units in an assault hex. So that's an assault hex. The active player may choose whether or not to attack with those units this turn. If he attacks any units that moved into the hex this turn, plus any undemoralized friendly units and leaders that began the turn in the assault hex and have not activated yet this turn, which they have not because it's a new turn, may attack if desired. So I feel like what I can do is I can move in and then conduct an assault with all of the units. I feel like by moving them in, it sort of allows the whole group to go. And so that's what I'm going to do. I've got a 6, 12, and I'm going to use the 2 for the direct fire. Because I don't know, again, if that's accurate, but that's what I'm going to do. Because it feels like the right thing to do to get that bonus, that mixed unit bonus. So there's the +1 assault, enemy AFB in town, woods, jungle without enemy infantry support. So we're starting with, let's see, 12, 14. That's going to put us on the 13. We're going to get a +1 to the 18 for that bonus because that tank's alone. And then I think there's a +1 because the side includes an undemoralized friendly leader and at least one non-AFB unit. So I feel like that takes us to the 18. That puts us on the 24. Now, again, there's still that -2 against defending units occupying town. But I don't know why you'd get the -2, but then the +1. But they are defending in a town. Maybe I'm doing that wrong. So what that would do is that would take us up 2, down 2, which would put us back on the 13. Maybe better safe than sorry. So maybe I did the last one wrong. Maybe I should have been giving him that -2 regardless, and they get the +1 to offset it a little bit. So let's do that. So again, we start on the 13, we go up 2 to the 24, we go down 2 to the 13. A 9 on the 13 is a morale 2 check. So again, the morale is a 7. Nope, it's a 6 because it is demoralized, I think. Okay, so its morale is reduced by 1, so it's down to a 5. Okay, so let's see how it does. So it's a 5 and it's a morale 2 check. Ooh. That's going to pass. Interesting. Honestly, I was not expecting that. Okay, so that's the first American activation. But now let me see. I'm supposed to do it the other way. So let's do that 6 against the tank, because it is still a 6. Although demoralized units defends at a direct fire of a quarter, but we're not going to do a direct fire. We're going to do anti-tank. So if it was just infantry, I guess we'd be doing a quarter of that 10 down to a 2 because you round down. But let's do that 6. 5 is 11. 5 plus 6 is 11. And this tank, I think it's a 1 again. Yeah, it's a 1. So it makes that a 10. A 10 is something, though. I think that's a morale check. Oh, no, a 10 loses a step. And if it survives, it must make a morale 2 check. Okay, so this is a little costly for the Americans. They're not damaging that tank like I had hoped. Okay, so that's a 9, so it's going to fail its morale check. So it becomes disrupted. That tank is demoralized. So you can see this is turning a bit into a mess, stack-wise. Okay, so there we go. That's that activation. Okay, so that's the first American activation. Second American activation. I think the second American activation, they are going to pass. I think they're going to pass because, again, I want the Germans to either have to come in and support them. I want them to have to do something. So, yeah, they'll pass for their second activation. Okay. So now let's do a German activation. Here's the trick. Do the Germans bring in more tanks into the fight where they're clearly not in a good position? Do they start trying to move these guys over? What do they do? I think first and foremost, they're going to try and bombard. They're going to take their 16s. They're going to make it a 32, and they're going to bombard. So they start on the 30. You're going to go down 2 columns because that's a town, so they're down to the 16. You're going to go down 1 column because it's a known friendly fire, so they're down to 12. And this is going to go up to 16 because the hex contains 3 combat units. So, okay, let's roll and see what it does. A 4 on the 16. Okay, for the Americans, that's going to be morale 1. Okay, let's see what it's going to be for the Germans. Now, for the Germans, the only effect that it could have is if it turns out to be a 2. Let me just double check. Yeah. Okay, so that's not going to do anything to the Germans. Okay, so let's do a morale 1. So, this captain has a morale of 7, but we're going to add 1 to the die roll. Captain's fine. You do the leaders first, I believe. This lieutenant, it's an 8. I'm going to add 1 to the die roll. 8, he's okay. So this tank is, again, they don't have any modifiers to help out with other rolls. That is going to be an 8 for the vehicle. 7 plus 1 is 8. Okay. That infantry is okay. One more. They're all okay. Okay, cool. These guys back into a pile. Okay, so yeah. Wow. I'm gonna put the leaders off to the side a little bit. I know it's getting messy. Okay. So that was the Germans. So now what do the Americans want to do? Again, they kind of want to pass because they want to force the Germans' hand. So they're going to pass. Now the Germans are going to... I'm worried that... So at some point you got to bite the bullet, right? You got to start moving up. And maybe what I should have done is I should have had them approach through the woods, but eventually you run into the same problem. Eventually you got to clear open ground and go for it. So these guys can move 3, which is 1, 2, 3. So they're going to get caught in the open, but I don't know. Oh no, there's leaders there that could, I was going to say, I didn't know if there were leaders that could spot for artillery bombardments, but there are. Okay. So, I'm going to activate this tank. Now, when that tank activates, it has to do a morale check. So we might as well just get this out of the way. So right now its morale is a 6 minus 1, 6 because it's reduced, minus 1 because it's demoralized. So 5. So, okay. So it failed its morale. So I think what that means is it's going to have to flee. Now, in order to flee, it has to flee away from the enemy units. So what I think that means is that it can actually flee this way. It can flee away. It can make its way towards the woods. It can do something. So let's do that. Try and protect the unit and not get it killed. Okay, so when it does that, let's see how far it goes. So it's supposed to move towards the nearest town or woods. So I'm going to have it move towards the woods. And I think it spends its entire allowance, but there's something because it's in an assault. They might get a free shot as it runs away. Okay, so yeah, so when you're evacuating a hex where an assault's taking place, you only get to move away one. So a normal flee would be you get to do your full movement. You'd actually almost have to, but in this case, it says for an assault fleeing, you only get to move one, and because they're not leaving behind a rear guard, these guys get one last shot. So I don't know if that was the smartest thing to do, but again, it just seemed like a matter of time. If I'm not going to commit more units into a bad position, I may as well just risk getting it out of the way. So let's see what happens. So they get a free assault shot. It's not a regular shot, it's an assault shot. So what I'm going to assume, and this might not be correct, I'm going to assume that you use the terrain that you were in as the free shot before it goes. It's not going to be out in the open. So we start again. There's 2 6s and a 2, so it's a 14. Starting at 13, we're going to go down 2 to a 5 because of the occupying a town. We're going to go up 1 for the leader. We're going to go up 1 for the AFV being by itself in the town. So we start at the 13, we end on the 13. 7 on 13, that's going to be garbage. That is literally the only thing that has no effect. 6 or an 8 would have been a morale 1. Okay. And again, because our leaders have no combat values, there's no way they could help out with that. So, okay, so the tank flees into this hex. And that's the German activation. Okay. I think we've had the Americans go 3 times. The Germans did their danger close bombardment. They just tried to flee. So we're back to the Americans. What are they going to do? You know what? It's a risk, but we're going to put a bombardment on that and hope that demoralizing the crap out of that unit might actually do something. So we're going to take 2 18s. That's a 36 and a 24. Makes it a 60. So a 60 on the bombardment chart puts you on the 55. So I don't think there's any modifiers. So there's a decent chance, we're looking for a 2 3 4 or a 10 11 12. So let's see how we do. 3. That's a pretty good roll for the Americans. That is a 2x. So I think what that means is it's going to be a morale 2 check. Because again, bombardments can't directly hurt an AFV, but they can mess up their morale. So I think, let me double check if it actually compounds it and becomes a worse morale check. Okay, so an AFV can only take a straight morale check from bombardments. It doesn't matter how many numbers are around the X, it's just a straight morale check. So again, we've got a morale of 6 because it's reduced, goes down 1 because it's demoralized. So we're looking for a 1. So let's see, it's a 5. 5, ooh, an 8. Okay, so it failed its morale check by 3 or more, which means it gets demoralized again. When a demoralized reduced unit, when a demoralized unit gets demoralized again, it takes a step loss. In this case, it's already taken that step loss, so I think it is eliminated. So what that's going to do is it's going to start to impact. There's 2 step losses for the Germans. All right. Maybe that did work out overall. It was a little painful, but yeah, you took out a German tank. All right. Okay. The Americans have gone 3 times. The Germans gone 3 times. That's the thing. They did that. They activated. I can't even remember. I'll start tracking this better next turn. going to say the Germans have one more before we start rolling. So this is we'll just say this is their third activation. And then, so we'll start rolling now. Okay, so the Germans, well, it's time to start. You know what they're going to do? These Germans, because they're in the same hex, they can combine their fire. Usually, like if a German, like you can't do the activation where this activates the 6 surrounding, but when they're in the same hex, it's okay. So that's a 20. It's probably going to be a garbage shot because they're in a town, but let's see what happens. Now, it's against, I guess the question is, should they be trying to take out that tank? They could do direct fire against the infantry, or they could do individual shots against the tank. Now, if it's individual shots, you can't combine the firepower. So, you know what? Let's see if we can take out that tank. Because if they can take out that tank, it's going to start messing with the Americans' more initiative a little bit. So, we'll say this one is moved fired to 6. But you're going to get a -1 because the other tank's in a town. They're in the adjacent hex. So maybe that negates it. We'll do the -1 for the town, +1 for being in the adjacent hex. So it's a straight shot. So they're going to add 6 to the die. 6 + 6 is 12, minus, I think, 1 for the armor is going to be 11, which is going to be a lose 1 step, which might actually kill this tank. I think he's already lost a step. Yeah, it's already lost a step, so it's dead. So that means the Americans now have lost 4 steps. So what I'm going to do is every 3 lowers their initiative. So I'm going to turn this to a 1 and spend the other 3 to lower the initiative. So that'll be how that works. Okay, so still spotted. The disrupted is gone. They'll count that as a spotted hex. Okay, that one moved fire. So let's roll to see if the turn ends. Nope. Okay, now the Americans get to go. Again, I don't know if the Americans want to do all that much. So they're going to pass. Okay, now the Germans have to go. Let's have this other German tank do a direct fire against them. So it starts with a 10. Targets are in a hex, so it starts at a 10, so that's going to put us on a 7 down to 2. I think you can only go down 2. There's like a limit to how much you can go up and down. I think you can go up 3 and down 2. Let's see if anything changes it down from a 7 to a 2. Higher elevation, which would make, so I think we wouldn't do that. I think you can only go down 2. Except it's going to be adjacent, so it's going to go up 2. So it's going to go down 3, up 2, so it's going to go to the 4. Nine on the 4 is nothing. Okay. So there's that. Let's see if the turn ends. No. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to restack these guys since they both moved fired. So now the Americans have to go. They're going to pass. Well, I guess I need to, no, yeah. Nope. Turn still goes. Okay, so now the Germans are on the hook. Now the Germans, what I should have done is maybe moved around the hill, right? That would have blocked line of sight. No, because you still end up in the same problem. You're always going to be in the same problem. You're always at some point. So the question is, do you just rush it? You know, the Americans only have 1 artillery left. This is a tricky thing. Obviously, the Germans would not know that, but that's sort of how this game is. Commanders get a little bit too much perfect information. I'm going to start moving up because the Americans are only going to get 1 shot. They were assaulting earlier, so I guess I should move fire them. These guys are all good to go. So I could move there, but then that's going to be bad because they can get a direct shot at them later on. Because they'd be adjacent. 1, 2, I could get there. They've already fired. They might not have line of... No, they would have line of sight. I'm going to do that. 1, 2, 3. So they're almost to the town. They've already done their thing. They're going to do an opportunity fire because they can go down the length of the spine hex. They can choose which terrain. Okay, so they're starting on the 6th column, which puts them on a 4. There's a +1 because it's opportunity fire, so that puts them on the 7. There's a +1 because the hex contains 3 combat units, so that puts them on an 11. So with opportunity fire, the way they suggest you do it is you put 2 there. There's no opportunity fire markers, but they suggest because you can do 2 opportunity fires instead of activating. And, you know, if you don't get to use both opportunity fires, you know, tough luck. Also, you can't do opportunity fire into the same hex. So I think they would have spent the first opportunity fire there, you know, because it went like 1, 2, 3. So we'll do 1 opportunity fire there. And crap. So they're on 6 and they were up, which is 4, they were up 2. 1, 4, 3 combat units, 1, 4 opportunity fire. So that's going to be on the 11. So let's start with that. Ooh, 11 on the 11. That is a morale 2 check. So we take away 1 of these, and they're going to make a morale 2 check. Now, again, their morale is currently a 7. This leader has a +1 for combat, but nothing for morale. So we'll start with the leader. They always go first. So they're going to go at a 9 for this morale 2. Oof. Okay, let's check this out. Okay, so here's the thing I'm not quite sure about. There's a thing that says that during opportunity fire, the +1 bonus column shift for having multiple units in a hex does not apply because it only impacts the unit that's currently moving. At the same time, it says a single leader activates and directs all units in his hex plus the 6 hexes adjacent to him. Some or all units stacked together in the same hex activate at once, with or without leaders. So I may have been playing this game wrong entirely. Like, I've always moved them together as a group, but maybe the idea is you activate them all and then you go boom, boom, boom. In which case, I could see how that would negate that 1 for being in the group. So maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Maybe you only move them 1 at a... God, see, that seems like it would start to add 1 more layer of things you have to track. I'm not 100% sure. Like, usually I would just move them as a group because they've all activated together, so you move them together. But I could see how the rule stating you never get the +1 for opportunity fire would mean that even though they're all activated at once, they don't all move at once. So let's pull them back. So we'll start with this leader activating. We'll send the first one out. Got to there, and then took a shot. The shot, you know, we'll say, let's do the whole thing again. So we start with a 6, get a +1 for opportunity fire. They're on the 4, that puts them on a 7. There doesn't seem to be anything for being out in the open. So, okay. Roll a 10 on the 7 column. Okay. That's a morale check. So they're going to get a morale check. See, but then how would you do a morale check with the... See, this is what I don't get. So does the leader have to move with them, or do they get the benefits of the morale because that's the leader that activated them? I'm not 100% sure. That's why in my head it made sense that they all move together, because then it's clear like they would get the morale bonus. But it also says in the rules that even though they activate, they don't have to go to the same hex as the leader, but that might only be when you're doing like the surrounding hexes. Like if this captain activated that lieutenant, obviously they don't have to go to the same place. But when it's in the hex... Okay, it says it's not necessary to activate all units in a stack during an activation. Okay. Then it says here, the activated unit, leader, or group performs actions in no specific order, but all actions must be designated before the first is performed. So again, I feel like this is going to turn into a nightmare if you're not doing it in a group, right? It's like, oh, he's going to go there, 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 he's going to go there. Okay, go. It seems crazy. Especially imagine if you had like a whole chain. I mean that and then opportunity, like that seems nuts. So imagine you had a whole chain, like you had a captain, a lieutenant, and a sergeant. And the captain activates the lieutenant activates the sergeant. Now you have to pre-designate what everybody's going to do before you make the first move. But in this sense, with opportunity fire possibilities, you're not moving in a group, right? I'm trying to think what the best way would be to do this so you're not going crazy. Because then all of a sudden you have like, okay, 1, 2. So you'd have to say like, okay, this group's going to move there. But then part of the group might move there, but part of this group might move there. And then you sort of have to remember all of that. And then you say, okay, go. And then maybe I'm missing something, but that feels like a nightmare. So maybe an easier way to do it is you just move them as a group and you say, okay, the opportunity fire is going to affect the leader, or it's going to affect this unit. Maybe you can just sort of pick and choose a unit in a stack just to keep it simple. That's what I'm going to do. We'll have the opportunity fire go on that guy. A 10 is a morale check. There's no morale bonus. We're at let's see, the Germans have a 7 morale. By the way, a 12, like a natural 12 for a leader, or maybe anybody, just automatically demoralizes. It doesn't matter what the morale is. You get a natural 12, it's an automatic demoralization. Okay, so they got a 7 on a 7, so I guess they passed. So you can't opportunity fire the same unit in the same hex, but I guess I could opportunity fire a different unit in that same hex for the second one. So they're going to be moved fired. And let's do a different one. Do it against this guy. A 6. Okay, they passed. All right, so opportunity fire. They've moved 1, 2. They're going to go up to 3. Now, once they stop, that's their activation. Let's see if the turn ends. Okay. We're going to give them a moved fire because it turns out I can't track it. Now, they can spot for bombardment. We're going to do an 18 bombardment for our next American activation. That's our last artillery for the Americans. So let's see what happens. 18 on the bombardment is a 16. The target does contain 3 combat units. So it's going to go to the 21. And I think that's it. There's nothing for being out in the open, which is surprising. Or maybe it's not surprising. Who knows? Okay. 21 column. 4. That actually might be okay for the Americans. A 4 is a morale 1. Okay. So let's see. The lieutenant starts first. He's a 9. We're going to add 1 to his roll. He's fine. Everybody else is a 7. First guy is fine. Second guy, ooh. The second guy going to be demoralized. Let's do the third guy. Oof. Demoralized. Okay. So now let's see if the turn ends. Nope. Okay. So now to the Americans. So here's the thing. They've already moved and fired. They cannot opportunity fire. These guys are out of view. These guys don't have line of sight from there to there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these guys up. And they're going to be ready to obliterate these guys when they try and come in. Okay. See if the turn ends. Nope. Now it's the Germans. Okay, so having watched these guys run out in the open, get cut down to pieces, I think they're going to pass. See if the turn ends. Whoops. No. And then I think the Americans are going to pass, so the turn will definitely end. So that moves us there. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you go. So there's the first 4 turns of this. What I think I'm going to do is I'm not going to bore you to death with every single step of every single turn. But hopefully this gives you some idea of how the game works, gives you some idea of a lot of the questions I had, going into this game kind of cold. Like I did not read the rules before starting, but I have read them a number of times in the past. And hopefully what I'll do is I'll now do updates every turn or two, little quick updates of what happened, some of the questions that came up, any mistakes that were made, and we can see how it goes. So you're not seeing literally every step and every roll of every single turn for 16 turns. So thanks. Yeah. And we'll hopefully try and keep this going.